Now that they were in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, Henry decided he felt a little better. The voyage across the Atlantic, the storms, the sickness, were beginning to fade like a bad dream. In the old country, Henry's family had been tenant farmers with no chance, as his mother said, of bettering themselves. Uncle Ned had emigrated to Upper Canada and sent back glowing reports. It's a free country, with good, cheap land where a man can work and get ahead. After much discussion, Henry and his parents had packed their few belongings, booked passage for Montreal, and sailed away with high hopes of a farm of their own and a new life in a new land. But the trip was a nightmare. When would it end? Fever had broken out below decks. Henry was recovering, but his father lay sick in his bunk, his fever mounting. Henry had awakened in the night to the sound of his mother's weeping. His father was dead, and Henry, now frightened, watched as he was buried at sea. They left the ship at Montreal and boarded the stage for a bone-jarring ride to bypass the rapids at Lachine. Then they crowded on the deck of an old steamer for the final leg of their miserable journey. And now the endless miles of rivers and forests behind them, they were in Upper Canada. Henry spotted Uncle Ned on the crowded dock. Ned shook his head when he heard their sad news. I don't know just how we'll manage, but I won't see you stuck. Come home now. I'm sure you both need rest and good food. Used to crowded England, Henry stared in wonder at the size of the farm. No neighbors could be seen in any direction. This is a big country, with room for everyone. But Henry found it a bit scary and decided he'd like to see the village. He missed his father, his friends, the old farm. Would he ever feel at home here? Just outside town, on the river, Henry found the grist mill. I guess this is where Uncle Ned gets his wheat ground into flour. He said good morning to the miller and watched the big millstones turning. At the end of the main street, he saw sparks and smoke billowing from a large chimney. The blacksmith's boy was working the bellows for the forge as the blacksmith was reshoeing a farm horse. At the livery stable next door, a sign offered horses and wagons for rent, and a teamster was just pulling out. Through an open door, he could see a saddler mending a harness. Next door, a man in a leather apron nodded to him as he hung up a handbill in his store window. The printer went back to his press, and Henry, fascinated, edged in the door. They chatted as the man pulled off the printed pages. If you come back tomorrow, you can deliver these handbills for me, and we'll talk some more. Outside, a loud bark behind him made Henry jump. Oh, don't worry about Brownie. He just wants to make friends. My name's Jim Wright. What's yours? Henry explained who he was. I'm working with my father today, or I'd show you around, said Jim. We have a farm about 2 miles out, but my dad does some tinsmithing, too. He works right here beside the store. Come and say hello. Henry watched Mr. Wright as he marked around a pattern on a sheet of tin. You're making pie plates, aren't you, sir? That's right. They'll be sold in Watkins' store. Henry decided to visit the Watkins general store next. Mrs. Watkins glanced at him curiously. And who might you be? I'm Ned Walker's nephew, Henry, and I think we're going to be living around here." "Glad to meet you," beamed the storekeeper. "Tell your family I'm open for business any time. Knock real hard if the door is closed. It just means we're upstairs, but we're always open for business." Henry wandered on down the dusty street. He looked in at the cabinet maker, busy cutting out seats for chairs. But he was getting tired and hungry, so he decided to go back to Uncle Ned's. He felt better, though. He'd made some friends. Back at the farm, he told his uncle about his day. "It's really a very large town." "And it's still growing. More settlers are moving in all the time. A lot of men farm and have a trade on the side. Our neighbor to the west is a cooper. He makes barrels, tubs, and buckets for this whole area right there in his barn. Beyond him there's a tanner. We all take hides to him to make leather, for shoes, for harnesses. If the wind blows right, you can smell the curing hides from here." That evening his mother tried to reassure him. "It'll work out, Henry. I'm a good dressmaker. Give me a little time, and we'll find our own place and settle here, even if we can't have a farm." Henry wasn't sure, but there was nothing he could do, so he went to sleep. Henry wanted to help his uncle, but there wasn't much he could do around the farm until they were ready to sow the winter wheat. After the midday meal, Henry remembered the handbills. "Good," said Uncle Ned. "And you can help me by getting some nails. Tell Mr. Watkins I'll settle with him next week. We have some hams in the smokehouse just about ready, and Bertha says she's got extra butter." Henry was glad to get away. He circled through the fields around the town and came in at the other end.
Ma. M-O-P.
He passed the schoolhouse. "I hope Mother doesn't make me go there," he thought. "I can figure and write my name. Besides, I need to work."
Oh.
He looked in on the doctor's surgery. Another place to avoid. Next door he watched the wheelwright fashioning a buggy wheel. He stopped to look at the handbills outside the inn and chatted a bit with the innkeeper. But the printer's shop was what interested him the most. The printer smiled when he saw him. "Good boy. Here are the handbills. Put them up anywhere people will see them. The inn, the general store, the smithy, and then come back here." Henry ran from one end of the village to the other, putting up the handbills. Mr. Hooper gave him 6pence, obviously pleased. "Come and meet the compositor." Henry wondered what that was. The compositor was the printer's assistant. Henry watched, fascinated. "Are you sure you haven't anything more for me to do? I'd like to stay." We could sure use some help. You say you're 12 now?" Henry nodded. "Well, maybe we could work it out so you could apprentice here. You talk to your mother about it. You'll have to work hard and learn to read and write well." Henry was so excited that he started back on the run and nearly forgot the nails his uncle needed. At the general store, he was surprised to see his mother. "Good news, Henry. I'm going to set myself up as a dressmaker, and Mrs. Watkins says she'll send me customers when they come in here to get dry goods. And I think I found a place for us to live. There are some rooms to rent over the cabinet makers. The front room will be big enough for my dressmaking shop." Henry felt a little dizzy, so much was happening, but he felt good, too. "Mother, I have news from Mr. Hooper, the printer. He wants me to apprentice there, and I'm sure that's what I want to be." So it was agreed. Henry and his mother moved into the village. His mother worked as a dressmaker, and Henry was learning the printing trade from Mr. Hooper. Before the year was over, Henry had almost forgotten about the old country and had adapted to his new life in Upper Canada, including one thing that hasn't changed to this day: snow shoveling.